It's Malcolm Dunn from LeadWell Global, talking to one of our advisory board members, Professor Gerry Bodeker. Gerry's a world-renowned expert in public health, and particularly in the area of mental health. Gerry, we're really faced with quite a unique situation on a global scale at the moment that we've never before encountered. And a little bit what we're trying to do is to say, what have we learned from this? Because learning in the moment is quite critical. It changes real opportunity to change belief systems, habits. So what have we learned from this that we can really take forward? And I know it's still in progress, but what have we learned so far, do you think?
I think that's right, Mal. It's still in progress. I don't think we can quite yet draw a line under what we've learned. What are we learning really as we go? Because obviously the epidemiology is very different in different parts of the world. What is Italy learning? What is Australia learning? Very different morbidity and mortality rates. So I think that there are a number of things that we're learning. One is that when we're living comfortably and well, we forget that we're a hair's breadth away from the bottom falling out of our world. And I think that we're being shown now that that's unwise. We think we can predict a trajectory to decline based only on economic trends and political and military trends. And this has shown us that's not true. So I think that one of the things nation states need to learn and companies need to learn is that we can be just a hair's breadth away from the bottom falling out of our world. And we need to have plans for that, just like a family or a couple, a responsible parent would have plans in their will for, unforeseen eventualities. I think we need to extrapolate that personal to the collective, and have the worst case scenario there as a possibility. This can come back. We can get mutations of this. This is not the first coronavirus that we've dealt with. It's called SARS-2. Ebola is a coronavirus. So we're seeing a number of these viral episodes becoming more severe, more globalized each time. So we shouldn't assume that when this is over, everything's over and it's back to normal. It's not. So I think that's one thing we need to do, is have the security in place that a parent or a family would want to have in place for unforeseen eventualities, in terms of financial reserves, in terms of crisis planning, crisis organization, hierarchies, and so on. I think another thing we need to do is understand that from a corporate point of view, the well-being of the staff, of the company, of the personnel, is really the well-being of the organization. Of course, everything pivots on the bottom line, but how does it pivot? How able to call back personnel after a crisis is a company if it hasn't placed the well-being of the personnel first? So I think that consciousness of we're in it together, you thrive, we thrive, we prosper. That kind of thinking, I think, is really important to embed deeply in corporate DNA. And we've seen from the research that companies that prioritize the well-being of their employees give them a share in the success of the company, but in the direction that prioritizes their health, their childcare, and so on. Those companies do well, and that's observable. Go ahead.
So Gerry, have you seen a bit of a difference in terms of the mindset from a political versus the medical field? So a little bit of nationalism or reductionism from the political leaders, shutting down states, never mind shutting down nations and borders, saying to people, cruise liners, well, you're offshore, it's your problem, so a real retreat in that way from political protectionist perspective, and yet from the health one seems to be share as much as you can, as quickly as we can, and be very helpful. So wondering about the mindset of the leaders and what we learn from that in terms of collaboration. We're in this together. How do we solve it collectively? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I'm a public health academic, and segregation of populations is the first thing you do in an epidemic. So that makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, what that does and has done is trigger deep sort of tribal instincts in our species. And so there's blame and hatred and so on directed at the potential sources of this, and then that ping-pongs back and forth. Well, it might be a Chinese disease, but in the case of Malaysia, the Malays have gathered, at a religious gathering, and they've spread it. And so each side is blaming the other. I think that it brings out the best and the worst in our species. I think it'd be nice to take the Buddha's position of the middle road and find out what that is. And of course, that's an inner road. That's one of finding stability and equanimity within to make clear and balanced decisions. And I think that again gets back to the consciousness perspective of everybody has to work on throughout their lives on creating stability, equanimity, mental well-being for themselves, for those they're responsible for, be it family or community or company. Because when the chips are down, that's what we have to fall back on. Yeah. Our equanimity, our balance, our compassion.
Gerry, that's just so well put as the individual and the individual leader. We've been looking at this concept of quantum leadership, which is really outside in and saying what maybe we didn't notice while we were shifting the deck chairs is that the icebergs were all around us, and a bit of a wake-up call to take a much broader perspective. What is the ecosystem, economic as well as from a climate, from a cultural perspective, and for our leaders to be able to notice that, and that requires different mindsets of being able to say what's a broader collective well-being versus just our individuals. Do you think this could lead to a shift of that? This is probably a potential down the road, different way that we can interact and different level of communication on a global scale?
Well, as you mentioned, I chair the Mental Wellness Initiative of the Global Wellness Institute, and we produced a white paper on mental wellness, which is a free downloadable PDF if anyone wants to get it. And we have some case studies in there of model examples of corporate wellness, corporate well-being that are good reference points. We also have evidence-based strategies for developing mental wellness and well-being, the science behind them that can be used with confidence by anyone in HR, in the C-suite, to create opportunities for developing mental well-being in the corporate team, in the employees. In terms of, is it a wake-up call? It's doubtless a wake-up call for all of us at the personal and the collective level. In terms of the quantum leadership and sharing, definitely that's really important. You've seen that China sent medical teams over to Italy, and straight away they said the reason that there's this crisis is that nobody's disciplined. You need to be far more disciplined than this, and they don't have the authority to create the discipline, but they're saying you've got to be more disciplined. If you learn from us, we've contained the situation through tough discipline, and your folks are still going out and having a cappuccino and strolling in the piazza and so on, and you've got to crack down hard now. That mightn't sound like the kind of warm, fuzzy sharing we might look for, but it is really good survival sharing. And in times of crisis, that's what you want. This is really a wartime footing that we're on. We don't have warring states, but we are under siege, and we have to appropriately go onto a wartime mentality of survival, and the sharing has to be in that context. Once we're through this, the sharing needs to be in terms of what have we learned. But I think we're far from being even near the middle of this, let alone on the other side, to draw those lessons. But I think it's really important that, again, we start identifying, particularly from the corporate wellness point of view, what has been best wellness practice for companies. In layoffs, what are the worst case and the best case practices? How have companies been able to support their people, even if they haven't been able to support them financially? How have they been able to help them segue onto benefit support, setting up mutual support networks among community teams? How have they been able to downscale to some part-time work at home so at least there's some income? Have they joined industry groups to lobby government to suspend taxation, to suspend mortgage payments and so on? All of this is making a difference to society, and I think that corporate leadership in this is really important, because governments listen to corporations. Business is the heartbeat of the economy, and I think engagement with that by companies, and sharing of that engagement with the employees, even if they're no longer on the payroll. Just, we're reaching out to you, you've helped us, we've been a team. The financials are impossible right now, but the connectedness is there. There'll be opportunities when this is over for you to return. I think those are the ingredients of good practice that we need to prepare ourselves to document.
Gerry, thank you so much for that. And sometimes it is good to take stock as we move through it, and the perspective taking, noticing the landscape, saying what can we learn, and some immediate application. And what I'm hearing from you is taking care of yourself. So you have the equanimity, the personal resolution and perspective to then take care of people around you, and the courage to do that, and call some of the questions about the broader support you need from the system. So thank you for that. We will put an acknowledgement to the Global Wellness Institute, and also to the wonderful white paper that you produced on mental health and wellness, which is an excellent read. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Mel. Thank you for doing this good work.